What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Always happy to see you guys here, and welcome to my ranking of all 6 Final Destination films. This is a video that I tried getting out sooner. I wanted to get out sooner, but a lot of things was going down on my end with family flying in. It just became too hectic. I wasn't able to get to it in time, but I'm here now to talk all 6 Final Destination films, to where I'll be going over my highs and lows, analyzing which one is the best and which one was the worst, and vice versa. And if you've not checked them out yet, I have the reviews for all 6 Final Destination films in the link in the description down below, so check those out when you can. Starting off number 6, the bottom of the barrel, the worst of the worst, you guessed it, The Final Destination, the 4th entry in this franchise. This one is the worst possible entry in this franchise to date. From the poor acting to the mind-numbingly poor CGI, and the dumbass decision that they decided to make it 3D, which only showcased how bad the CGI was, to the point of obscurity to downright insanity, to the point where you have a film that's cluttered with bad CGI, to poor acting, bad writing. It was basically a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. And the only reason why it made money, why it was the highest grossing film of the franchise, that is until Bloodlines, is because it was advertised as the final chapter. And just like all scam artists, it basically worked. It basically worked for the time of this release in 2009. It just roped you in, and it made you think that it was going to be the best out there, the final one, the one that'll end it all. And like I said, all the best scam artists accomplished that. And unfortunately, this one took the cake on that. So you have a single character that none of which I cared for, and you have these illogical decisions that a lot of the characters makes to where you would never see that happen. I know you're supposed to suspend your belief just a little bit, but this one pushed its boundaries. And at this point, you have a premise that's pretty much been drugged through the mud, only in a much poorer constructed way, to where this franchise just screamed, let's have something different, let's have something new. And the way this one presented itself, even a much poorer quality, it did not help its case whatsoever. This one was just so uninteresting, it was bland, and it was just downright boring. Nothing about this, not even the kills, which was the worst part of this film, and for a Final Destination movie, that's bad to say. That's just blasphemous to say about a Final Destination movie. That's how bad this one was. They even dropped the ball there, because a lot of the kills, because of the bad CGI, just looked so weird and unrealistic. It just came off as a poorly constructed Saturday morning cartoon with no interest and no build-up. It was just weird. There's nothing here, no excitement, nothing to get you pumped. This one sucked. So that's why number 6, The Final Destination. Now that that's out of the way, now that my anger and frustration is gone, needless to say, there is a huge gap between my number 6 and my last 5. So coming in at number 5 is Final Destination 3. And even though this one is still low on the list, it's way more tolerable than my number 6. That's for sure. It is tolerable, yet there are problems I had with it. I did like Mary Elizabeth Winstead as our main character. I think she was the best lead we had in this franchise so far. I like the way she carried herself. I like the emotional depth that she showed. I thought the roller coaster scene, the thing that kicked this film off, was actually quite intriguing. And it certainly did help that I've always had a fear of roller coasters. I always thought that that was an enjoyable scene. The kills and the gore and the carnage candy was actually ramped up a little bit here. Even though this one is the first one to actually show CGI blood, it's very rare, and you can tell, but it's not bad. Especially compared to that 4th film. It's not bad here at all. But they do rev it up, and they do get pretty gnarly at times. That being said, and here comes the real reason why this one's still low on the list. After the massive, huge impression that Final Destination 2 made on me at that time, by the time 2006 rolled around and we got a Final Destination 3, after watching it, I felt like it was a little bit of a step down, because how much Final Destination 2 impressed me, I was wanting more of that. I was wanting more of that oomph, more of those shocking surprises, especially in terms of story and characters. Now, I know you don't go to these to go see Shakespeare or anything logical or anything like that, but after the impression that Final Destination 2 made on me, especially in the character development and the story, I wanted more of that. I was expecting more of that by the time the third one had come out. And here it just felt like a little bit of a step down, a little bit of a 10 steps forward, 5 steps back sort of situation. So that was a little bit of a disappointment, and this one was the first one to have 2 premonition scenes, one at the beginning to kickstart the thing off, and one at the end. And something happens here that kind of confused me in a way, and I know I didn't mention this in the film review series, but she has this premonition in the second premonition on the train, of the train crash, to where she has it, but then it stops like 3 seconds before it actually happens. And I'm thinking, what was the point of that? So I don't know, that was weird. The more I thought of it, and yes, I know I should have mentioned that in the film's review, but the more I thought of that, that was just kind of weird. And the way it was shot and the way it was lit, that whole scene, other than one kill scene, which was actually pretty cool, other than that, I just didn't really feel like it was necessary. So yeah, I mean, Final Destination 3 is tolerable, especially way more tolerable than 4. It's fine. It's fine. I can actually have a good time with it. It's one of those that's kind of a little bit of a letdown, especially after 2, and that's why number 5, Final Destination 3. Coming in at number 4 is Final Destination 5. This is a film that actually kind of surprised me, especially after the abysmal train wreck that was The Final Destination. Going into this, I knew that this was another 3D adaptation of this franchise. This film was filmed in 3D, but after seeing it for the umpteenth time in its 14 years since it's been out, they definitely learned their lesson from that 4th entry, to where you have a film that's in 3D, but they don't take on as much of it as they did with that 4th chapter. The 3D aspect here, it still kind of looked a little cheesy in some aspects, but here it's not as caked on as much. It's not as ridiculous, it's not as abysmally unwatchable that 4th film was. I felt like they learned their lesson here, especially with the kill scenes, which, unlike that 4th entry, it didn't look as cartoonish here, it didn't look as ridiculous or unwatchable. They were actually done pretty well here. And you got a set of characters that sort of came close to the 4th entry, but I didn't hate them as much. I didn't want them to die as much in this entry. Even the main lead, which still didn't give me as much as I wanted, but he wasn't as bad. And I thought the premonition scene with the bridge collapse scene was actually done pretty well. I thought that was another one of those well done, executed disaster scenes that kicks off this film, and I thought they did that really well. I liked how they brought the whole cop aspect back into this, which we hadn't seen since that first film, to where you have a set of really, really weird deaths occurring, and of course you're going to get the police involved. That was one thing that was missing from the last few entries up until this point. But yeah, I felt like Final Destination 5, they pretty much learned their lesson, but the only thing that kind of holds it back for me, and I think it was the only thing that really frustrated me, was the way that they handled Tony Todd's character. Now, as much as I love the guy, as much respect I had for him, I felt like that they didn't really do him justice in this. So after being absent in the last 2 films, he does come back as the coroner, as Butterworth. That's the character's name. And I felt like they didn't really utilize his character that much, all that well. After being absent for 2 films, they didn't really do that much with him. Yes, he was in it much more, and then just one little cameo scene, 3 or 5 minute scene. But I felt like they didn't really expand on his character that much. And I kind of wanted more from that. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. But other than that, I felt like Final Destination 5 was head over heels better than 4 was. And that's why number 4, Final Destination 5. Coming in at number 3 is the original OG Final Destination from 2000. Now, I do have some nostalgia for this, but not as much as the later one that I'll discuss. But I thought it was an interesting premise to come out at the time, which was actually inspired by an unaired episode of The X-Files, which I had no idea at the time of the filming of that review. So it was an interesting premise where you have this group of kids who gets thrown off of this plane after one of them freaks out claiming that it's going to blow up, and then later on it does blow up, and then death starts coming for all the survivors in the months following. And again, I thought that was an interesting concept. I thought it was really good to have at the time, especially in the midst of all these other villains that we've had, like Freddy and Jason and Michael. Now we have this unidentified, supernatural, unseen entity that just gets you by any means necessary, and just by objects being around you, and just the concept of death, which we actually face every day. And I thought that was an interesting, cool concept for a film series within itself. You got great characters here, like Devon Sawa, our main character lead, who I always thought was cool. And you got some good kills, though not as good as like some of the later ones, which I've already kind of touched on here already, but you got some cool kills here as well. But some things didn't quite hold up for me, and some things that I didn't quite mention in the film's review, but I'll mention here nonetheless. But there was some reshoots that happened during the production of this film that I found out later on after I reviewed this, to where they reshot most of the third act. And because of that, it kind of created some logical issues, especially by that third act when Alex was trying to save Ali Larter's character from that impending doom, being in the car and him holding those electrical wires that was going everywhere. And there was like an alternate scene to where he actually dies at the end of this, and then Claire ends up having his baby, and there was that whole thing, and test audiences hated that, so they had to reshoot all that. But it kind of made illogical points throughout the film leading on to that because of that, but they had to work with what they had, so it is what that is, and it just made it feel kind of weird. And then you have the whole thing about the Carter character, who up till like the very last act hates Devon Sawa's character, and then he ends up being friends with him after everything that goes down. It just felt rushed, and I just really buy that. Plus you have the romance angle between Devon Sawa and Ali Larter's character, which I didn't quite buy into because of all the reshoots that happened. There's one scene, I believe, that was supposed to be on the beach, to where they consummated their love and everything, but that was cut out due to timing issues, or the test audiences just didn't quite get with that, so they had to cut that out. And then that deleted scene that was at the end of the third act that I mentioned earlier where he dies, that got cut out as well. But because of that whole issue between Ali Larter and Devon Sawa's character, I didn't quite get into that because of that, and they didn't really touch on that much because of in the final product. So that was a little bit of a letdown, which again basically touches on the logic issues. But it was a great film. It was a great film premise nonetheless. So that's why number 3, Final Destination, the OG. Coming in at number 2 is Final Destination Bloodlines, the new kid on the block. I've seen this thing in theaters 3 times already, and it still gets to me. It took him 14 years to get to this one. And there's a reason. There's a good reason for that. So basically they go a different direction here, to where you have a concept of a franchise that's pretty much drugged this into the ground, some worse than others. Here, they actually go a little bit of a different route. Yes, it's still the same as this person that has a premonition of a catastrophic event, but instead of it being a wash, rinse, or repeat thing, they go the route of this girl having this premonition, but it's somebody else's premonition, and it's actually her grandma that went through this. And it starts the whole bloodline thing, the bloodline subtitle of family, and how death was cheated by somebody like 50 years ago, and because of that, families exist that's not supposed to exist. I thought that concept was actually quite genius, and especially for a franchise that's pretty much wash, rinse, and repeat itself numerous of times, some worse than others. I thought that Bloodlines was actually a good way to keep it fresh and keep it steady, in a way that needed a change, that needed a fresh new start. And because of that, you have the whole concept of family. Just that alone, it actually kind of creates these characters that you actually care for, that you actually care for 100%. And it's not just strangers that just doesn't care about one another at all. It's actually family members that are being preyed upon this time. And because of that, you actually kind of feel for them, because you have that whole family dynamic. And I thought that was pretty good. That was pretty genius. And it was just something that this franchise needed in order for it to actually continue. And because of that, you have characters that you actually care about. Especially one character out of this family that I found quite enjoyable. I truly liked the whole family concept. Again, it's just characters that you actually care about, and you just don't want to see them die, actually. And you actually feel for them. I loved how they handled Tony Todd's character. As everybody knows, this was Tony Todd's final appearance before he passed away. And even the third watch, I still got tears in my eyes with that scene he did in the morgue where he delivered his lines just perfectly. And what was so genius about it, they weren't even scripted. They were actually coming from his heart. The way that he delivered that scene alone just made me tear up. And I'm just getting ready to tear up here now just thinking about it. But I loved how they handled that. I loved how they handled his character. Rest in peace, Tony Todd.
Good luck.
The gore was top notch. Now again, there's a bunch of CGI deaths in this, which at this point you kind of expected. The gore and the kills was top notch. They even triumphed over any of the others, especially one, which I won't get into, because I know it's still kind of freshly released out there. But man, they did a really good job on those kills. Now this film wasn't without its fault, particularly its main lead in Caitlin Santajuana. I couldn't quite get into her character. I didn't like the way she perceived her character. I couldn't really buy into what her character was going through, because it's just the way that she executed this part was not believable. Even the third time watching it, I was hoping I would have a different opinion about it. I just couldn't get into her. Like, all 3 times watching this film, I just couldn't get into her. I couldn't quite buy into her hysterics and just the way that she carried herself. Now, that's not the fault of the actress. I'm sure she's pretty cool, but I couldn't quite buy into her character. Plus, there was some logic issues involving the main character's grandmother, where her living situation was, and that death trap that she apparently claimed to have survived all these decades since the late 60s. She was able to survive in this death trap that she called a home that was clearly a death trap, that any time death could have came for her regardless, yet she's still able to survive that, which I didn't quite get. But you take it with a grain of salt and you get what you get. It just confused me, but awesome sequel. Again, there's a reason why they waited 14 years for this, because they didn't want another wash, rinse, and repeat film just for the sake of a sequel. So that's why number 2, Final Destination Bloodlines. But my number 1 will always and forever be Final Destination 2. That one will always have a special place right here. Not just because of nostalgic factor, although that does play a big part in this, but I always thought that this one was the best in the franchise, especially in terms of story and its character developments and writing. Again, I know you don't go to these films to see Shakespeare or anything professional. It's a horror film about death coming for you and characters doing stupid things. I understand that. But with Final Destination 2, I thought it was the most genius and the most smartly written film out of this series. No matter how many sequels they come out with, unless they actually do make a sequel that compares to this one, which Bloodlines came pretty damn close, which is why it was so high up on the list. Final Destination 2 will always and forever be my favorite one. With that log truck car pile-up scene at the beginning, I thought was the most badass and most clever way to open this film. What really makes this the most dominant opening out of all of these films in this franchise is the fact that we use this kind of transportation every day in our daily lives, from getting to point A to point B. Whether it's work or school or whatever, we use this kind of transportation every day in real life. And that's why every time I drive, every time I get in the back of a log truck, I'm like, nope, screw this. I'm getting another lane. I'm gonna pass your butt. So that's what makes the opening scene, the log truck scene at the beginning of this film, so effective, because it could kind of happen. Even though these films showcases the way death works, which is out of this world and unrealistic, again, it just goes back to that suspend your belief thing about what you have to do in movies, especially like this, movies like this, but it could happen. Not to that extent, maybe, but it could happen, and that's what makes it more tense, more edge of your seat, more scary to think about. And I think if I ever did a ranking video of all of these, which I'm not saying I will, but if I ever did a ranking of all of the incidents and the accidents and the deaths of this, the log truck car pileup scene from Final Destination 2 would be top notch on the top of my list. Again, it's just the thought of, like, you have no choice. We use this transportation every day. How else are we going to get to where we need to go? And it's just the thought of something like that happening. So when you watch this film, when you watch this entry, it's just all that more effective because of that. And all the more reasons why I love Final Destination 2. It's just that gripping and that sort of realistic in a way. Now, things can happen on a roller coaster. You can be scared of a roller coaster. You can be scared of a plane. You can even be scared of racetracks. But in a scenario to where you use this every day with no choice, when you do have a choice to go on a roller coaster, when you do have a choice to go on a plane or go to a racetrack or wherever else over a bridge, you have to use transportation. No matter if it's on a bus or a car or a van or whatever, it's transportation on a highway. So watching this film, that's what makes it more effective, and all that more effective. And again, that's why I praise Final Destination 2. It's because of that, I think that's why what also makes this sequel the strongest and the most tensified and the most edge of your seat in the best way possible. I loved how Tony Todd brought up the whole concept of only new life can defeat death, which I thought that was pretty genius within itself, and just the way he delivers that was really great. I liked that scenario. I wish they would have continued on with that, especially in 3. Again, this is the reason why 3 was a little bit of a letdown, because just the way that they handled everything in 2 was just awesome, was just good. Just the way that they tied in everything with the characters from that original film to this one, to Final Destination 2, it's just pure genius. Just how they tied up everything and all the loose ends, and how death was working backwards. I know to some that might seem a little bit too convoluted, which I understand, but to me, I loved it. I've loved it ever since it first came out. It dawned on these blue eyes here. I just love that concept from the very get-go. The only thing that kind of drags this down, but not by much, was involving Devon Sawa's character from the first one, where he gets killed off screen by a brick. And you just find out about it from a news article in like one scene. And to me, that was just weird. That was just lazy writing. That's the only thing in this film that kind of weighed it down, that I thought that somebody kind of dropped the ball. It's like, maybe we could just kill this character off in the most lamest way possible after everything he's gone through in that first film. And it's kind of like one of the producers had a grudge against Devon Sawa if he was planning on coming back at all. I have no idea about that, but it's like somebody had a grudge against that actor and say, you know what, you're not coming back. Screw you. We're going to kill you off like this in the most irritating and lowest way possible. So yeah, I don't know. That just kind of seemed a little weird to me. But other than that, Final Destination 2 is still and always will be the best in the franchise to me. And that's why Final Destination 2, number 1. Well, that's it for this one, guys. What's your ranking of all 6 Final Destination films? Already told you mine. What is yours? What is your least favorite to most favorite? The movie gods and even I will forgive you if you say the 4th chapter. No judgments here. But what is your favorite? Do you have one? Is there a particular one that you put above all else? Do you even like this franchise, or is this not for you at all? Is this just another franchise to you that's not worth mentioning? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, as always, for clicking here and watching this. I really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. Make sure to click that bell icon so you don't miss a thing if you like what you see. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.